There we go. We are live. Hey, everybody. Mental Health Warriors channel. We are going to get started today. Hang on. I just have to find what I need. Here we go. There we go. Welcome back, everybody, to the Mental Health Warriors channel. I get to be the host today, or one of the hosts today. So we are talking about how to overcome fear of our own identity after many years of mistreatment. We are waiting for our guest of honor to join us today, but we've got Audrey and Nick and Dr. Gilly and Annette and Richard. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Hey.
Happy to be here.
Fabulous.
Awesome. So while we wait for our guest of honor, does anybody have anything that they want to share regarding this topic or your experience of identity issues while being mistreated, or just in general of, I think all of us have some sort of mask that we've put on somewhere along the lines in our lives. So whoever wants to share, have at it while I troubleshoot what's going on. Don't everybody talk at once.
Oh, I'm always the first person to go.
Go for it.
That way I get the nerves out. Okay, so how to overcome fear of my own identity. It's interesting because this morning when I was doing my card polls, I do Oracle card polls every morning, and they're actually a yoga deck. So they're very unique. So they give you 3 things to look at. Hold on, I think I put them on my phone. And it's very interesting because it came up as identity. So when it comes to identity, with my mental health issues that I've had in the past, because of the years of mistreatment that I experienced, now I know who I am. So that for me is the most important thing from the result of that. But how to overcome the fear is I basically read and reread this amazing book by this woman, Susan Jeffers. Has anyone heard of her?
Yes, I've heard of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's amazing. So when it comes to identity, I really love the fact that I know who I am now. I know what I want. Overcoming it took a lot of deep reflection, inner reflection, healing. And now I don't feel any of that anger or fear. I took her suggestions in her book to heart. I was a student. I just studied everything she said. I put up her pain to power chart. I started using all the different vocabularies like should, could, all those different ones that empower you. And that made a lot of difference for me. And understanding that I didn't always have to, my big thing with my mental health was always fleeing. So I would always run away from things. And yeah, so that's my story in a nutshell. Who's next?
I guess I'll go second if that's okay.
Go for it.
Oh, okay. For me, having my identity as a Christian in Christ, knowing who I am through Him. When I became, I'm a Jewish person, but I also accepted Jesus into my heart when I was 24, and I was always a follower. I would follow whatever others did, especially in high school and college. But then God, through Jesus, made me a leader, and to know my identity in Him, I was able to overcome so much trauma, so much narcissism, and just knowing and having Him in my heart helped me to overcome the most abusive situations. I wrote a book, and I'm in the middle of my second book about it, actually my third, about overcoming trauma, healing, deliverance through Jesus. And He has literally transformed my life. I never went for therapy, although I'm a trauma coach and counselor and mental health coach and counselor. I never went to therapy through this. The Bible actually helped me, and declaring and decreeing scriptures, speaking out the word of God. It's like affirmations, but speaking it out. And when I worked in the hospitals, mental health hospitals, psychiatric hospitals, I would teach my clients to declare and decree a thing like the Bible says, and it shall be established. So declaring scripture helped me, and it helps others. That's one of my biggest ones. And that's all, I guess, to let somebody else, but that was my answer.
Yeah, I could jump in. I mean, I think identity is fundamentally how we perceive ourselves, and it's such a big thing, and I think that through it's all based on our own perception of how we define ourselves. And I know for myself, some struggles I've gone through. It's having that sort of a little bit linked to your self-belief and confidence for how do you describe yourself to other people. If people said to you, who are, what do you do, or how do you say what you do or who you are, what you're passionate about? How do you define yourself? And I, when I've had struggles with depression, or when I was made homeless, and when I had divorce, all those points, I gave myself a different identity. I perceived myself differently, and and obviously I think when we're when we're doing well in life and we're succeeding at something, how we identify ourselves, how we describe ourselves, how we come across is different to when we're in those low times, when when we're struggling, and certainly I felt I've had a lot of ups and downs, and those lowest points when I was, like I said, I'd was homeless and been divorced, and I'd lost a lot about depression and things. Yeah, my identity. I think I felt I lost a lot of my identity. I'd created this identity. I built it up, and I had a clear identity. I knew who I was, what I was doing, what I was good at. I knew it all, and then it all disintegrated. And I went through a period of not knowing what my identity was, and then I thought I had to sort of build it up and create it again almost from scratch. I'm not what I thought I was. I'm not got the life I thought I was. So I was trying to build up, and part of that is, I think, build confidence, to have that self-belief that of who you are, and it's not. So yeah, definitely, that's my sort of experience with.
So I've been trying to think of like a good analogy. Are you done, Nick, or did you have more?
Yes, I'm done. Over to you, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, so I was going to use the peeling the layers of an onion, and then I was like, let's change it a little bit. So my stepbrother is a contractor, and one thing he once said that was interesting to me that kind of stuck was that he would send us pictures, like us, like my family, of when he would peel back the layers of paint and wallpaper in a house. And he would say it's fascinating because you really get to the history, or like the core of like what the house was, right, originally when it was built. And I think the way I think of identity is like we've got the core of like who we are, right? And then I think the rest are the details, right? There are experiences and preferences and emotional states and thoughts and opinions, and they change over time. And I don't think those things define us. I think, who we are is like who we are at the core. And I'm not saying it's like who you were as a kid or as an 18-year-old or whatever. I think it's just it's you, it's the observer, right? It's the person who's going through all of these experiences, which are a little bit more extraneous. And then in terms of like more traditional identity, the way that Westerners like think about it, I think like potentially like the best way to, like when you say, I don't know, like when people identify and they say, like, well, spirituality is important to me, for example, right? Or religion, or this is how I identify. I think those are good ways, to kind of try to understand yourself. And really what you're doing is you're identifying your values, like what's important to you. But the bottom line is that those might change too, right? Like you might value something at some point in your life, and then your value systems kind of change. But then you are you, like you're the same person, and that's okay. And I like that way of looking at identity. It allows some flexibility. It's what I'm referring to is more, it's kind of like an acceptance and commitment therapy lens. And I use a lot of like those strategies and, ideas like with my clients and for myself.
Richard, you got anything?
Well, I'm just sitting here listening to all you amazing folks, and it's amazing that, how important the word I am is. How we should use the word I am, and be careful how we use the word I am. Because I mean, especially, you're not your job. You're not your profession. And I heard the best thing I've heard when somebody says, you are who you are when you're alone. That's who you really are. So, and I think that's when we have to start thinking, well, who am I when I'm alone? And that's when we can actually get back to finding out who we really are. And like Nick said, I've had to reimagine and reinvent my life a few times, but it all came down to who I am and who do I want to be. So I love the topic, and I'm so grateful to be here today. Thank you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is one of the things that I've really started to talk more about, even within my self-care community, simply because I hear, especially moms, say, well, I'm just a mom, or I'm just a wife. So it's like we discount our role as woman, as nurturer, as strong, as beautiful, as capable. And we wear these labels, right? Like Richard said, you're more than what you do. So you can feel like conflicting things sometimes of, well, I'm a mom, I'm a caregiver, I'm a chauffeur, I'm a cook, I'm a cleaner, I'm a this, I'm a that. And then we wear that, but then we get stuck in that. And I feel like women, and men too, but women, especially stay-at-home moms even, because I know I was here, where when you are in those roles day in and day out and 24/7, and it feels like you don't have the break away or no time to pour back into yourself, you get so stuck in those identities. They're so revolved around the things that you do. They're involved and revolve around your children, and then you get lost. So then, like, when you have an empty nester situation, you're often like, well, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I enjoy. I don't know, because you've been so wrapped up in the things that you do versus who you truly are and connecting with yourself, and who, I like how Audrey said, the identity that God calls us, because we are chosen, we are worthy, we are enough. But we forget those things. And then we attach our worth to the things that we do and how we perform. And then we feel like we're not enough and we can't fill that role. So I'm loving this topic. I have not gotten a hold of our guest. So I guess we'll just kind of hope that she's gonna come. But is there any particular like role or identity that you feel like you have fallen into more than others? Like, do you find yourself, when you get so swept up in, say, day-to-day life, that you find yourself kind of drifting back to old patterns or old habits versus like walking in who you know that you are?
Can I share?
Sure.
I think that's a great question, because a lot of times it's, people, they forget, or it's actually, you have to practice knowing your worth. I have a women's group, and I always teach women, but it's for men just as much, obviously, to know their worth and to find their worth in God and to find their worth in Jesus. That's, what I believe, but also to find your worth in whatever whatever you believe in. For me, it's God, and making him priority. And a lot of times, it's easy to have negative self-talk or to doubt yourself, or, the enemy will bring in negative thoughts, but you have to constantly rebuke or, cancel that thought and speak life over yourself, and declare the positive affirmations and know who you are, and really check yourself all day long if you have to, because it's easy to get into that rut. But if you train your brain, or reframing your brain or your thoughts, and channeling your thoughts into positive self-talk, it really does change who you are as a person, and finding your worth and your identity in God or in yourself, or whatever you believe, putting your belief in, for me, Jesus. He's, but always reminding yourself about that, because it's easy, if you have mental health issues, and people I work with, I have to constantly tell them to, you know have the scriptures or have the positive affirmations in front of you, put it on your computer, remind yourself who really changes things that go on in your life, in your family, and your situations.
We lost her. Where'd she go? Hopefully she'll come back. Does anybody have anything else that they find themselves going back to old patterns and habits versus,
yeah, I mean, I could I agree. We wear so many different roles, so many different hats, like you say, father, husband, mother, friend, the job, the business, the volunteer work. There's so many hats, and these all linked to our identity. And what do we prioritize, and do we give ourselves labels? The labels other people give. But I mean, it's interesting, because I think definitely in the West, we identify. If we're working, we label ourselves. We give our identity linked so much to our job, and I think that's a reflection of in the West society we're in, that we place so much of our identity linked to our job. But I think with me, it's interesting. One of the biggest things for my identity, and the best role I have is being a father. And to me, that's the most important part of my identity, and the best role I have. And my favorite word, in the language, and my son calls me, calls me dad. So that, to me, that's the biggest part of my identity, and the most important part. But I think definitely for me, a long time, I linked my identity to my work. But then, definitely, who you are and what you're passionate about, and what difference you make to other people, it should be the bigger part of your identity. And I think it sort of links to that, why we, what we do in life and why we do it, and if we don't have a strong enough why, that motivation to do things, then we won't really do the right thing, and we won't have a motivation to keep going. And I think that's linked to our identity, because if we're doing the right thing in life, something we believe in, we're passionate about, and making a difference, and that's our why, that's what gets up and want to drives us forward, then that will be the most important part of our identity, isn't it? I guess if we're not quite in that stage, then maybe we'll struggle a bit more. So,
yeah. Annette, you were going to say something.
Thank you. I love the shares that we're having. This is a fabulous topic because I think it's been a long time since I identify with identifying myself, if that makes any sense. But now talking about it, yeah, I can see where I do identify myself with a lot with the I am, because like, I can't remember, I think it was Richard who said, you know, oh no, it was, well, one of you said something about the positive talk. I think it was maybe Audrey, but I'm sort of gone there now with the identity thing. Instead of being, I am a mother, I am a, you know, mentor, etc. and so forth. It's more like, I am happy. I am, you know, I'm peaceful. I'm joyful. It's sort of like my identity identifies with my well-being. And I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone else here, but for me, it really impacts me because it's like, from there, I kind of lead into the other parts of my life. Whereas way back when I was struggling a lot with my PTSD, it was, I was stuck as the identity of a wife. And then when I lost all that, then I got stuck in the identity in my career as a paralegal. And then after that, I got stuck in the role of, you know, a mother. And I took on, like, I was so identified with those roles that when I lost one of them, I was devastated. Like, my mental health went in the toilet because I didn't have the role of the wife anymore. And I didn't have the role of the paralegal. And so, you know, yeah, we got to have labels because that's how humans identify one another. But identifying with something to that extreme, and that's why I brought up Susan Jeffers' book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, is like, well, you know, in her chart of her grid of life, it was like, whoa, it was so mind-blowing to see that my life was 50% being a wife and 50% being a mother, and I had nothing else. So yeah, I could see where somebody would crash and burn with their mental health when you didn't relate to, you know, the happy things about, like you said, about being alone and really knowing who you are, right? So that was my take on it.
Yeah. So another question, what areas do you find yourself struggling to feel like you're good enough?
Well, I mean, for me, you know I struggle with imposter syndrome. You know, especially, I mean, I do a lot of things. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, but sometimes when I get invited to speak on big stages, I kind of think, wait a minute, I don't belong here. You know, I'm a ninth grade dropout. I don't even have a GED, and I'm sitting here talking next to Richard Branson. And sometimes somebody, I have to have a friend of mine say, but you are worthy. And, you know, like Audrey was talking about, I'm a child of God. I'm a child of the King. If he called me to be there, I'm supposed to be there. And I think for a lot, I mean, I could just speak for myself, but I know a lot of successful people, they deal with imposter syndrome more than most people ever think that they would. So, you know, what are your guys' thoughts on imposter syndrome? Is that what you're talking about?
yeah. I mean, I can relate to what Richard says. I mean, imposter syndrome, I think, you know, yeah, a lot of times what I do, and I think classic events where someone invites you to an event as an expert, you know, or as someone to come and share their expertise and knowledge. I think, yeah, definitely, I get that. Yeah, I have a voice of doubt. You know, do I have the right to do this? Do I have the expertise, the status? I don't know. All the doubts. Yeah, no, imposter syndrome is a big thing that I struggle with. I think that's, yeah, I can relate to that. That's certainly. So do other people have that?
Yeah, I said this just recently to a coach of mine. I was like, who am I? Who am I to think that I can go on these big stages? Who am I to think that I deserve to be at like $1 million mingle with celebrities and high-level business owners and the rich and famous, right? I'm just little old me. And she was like, you stop that right now, because you absolutely deserve to be there. You know what you're talking about. Like all of that reinforcement of, yeah, you're right. I do deserve to be there. So it really is easy for us to get into that imposter syndrome of like, who am I? Who am I to think that I deserve to be in the room with them? I'm not at that status level. What have I done, right? So I think that often can catch up with us in certain situations when we're pushed beyond our comfort zone, where we think, well, I'm not good enough for that. And then we shrink back and we hide and we go back into our shell or our, invisible box. Well, who put the lines there? Like we did, because we're our own worst critic. Versus what box? There's no lines. There's no limit. Like you can do it. It's up here. And it's what we're listening to or what we believe we have the capabilities of doing.
I also think that there's something nice about humility. Like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have a little bit of imposter syndrome, because it makes you less threatening, more genuine, more human. And I was recently talking with a client who got a position that, she was proud of, but then she said, well, I compare myself to the other people in the group and I just feel like I'm not as good as them. So then I asked her, well, when you think about like a team, right? Or like an organization and when there's a team, right? I was like, ideally you would want all of them to be the same, right? And she was like, good point. Because there should be variability. That's what makes a team strong. And so maybe that team needed a little old me, like people, when they introduce me on podcasts, they say ADHD expert, and I will never call myself an expert because I'm 35. There are other people who have a lot more experience than I do. In my eyes, they are experts. But expertise is relative, in relation to a graduate student. I am an expert. It just depends, like, who you're comparing yourself to. But it's also, I think, it's a good thing also to, be humble and, I think you're much more approachable and maybe more open-minded to growing and learning because, if you do go in saying, well, I am an expert, like, where's the room to grow? There's always room for more expertise, I think.
Yes, definitely something about celebrating our uniqueness because I think that's, I think with social media now we do it more than ever, it's comparing ourselves to others. And I think, social media makes that 10 times worse because we're bombarded with images and videos of other people, often seemingly successful, and that can put pressure on us. I'm not, I should be doing that or I'm not at that level yet. But I think, comparing ourselves to others, I think it's a human instinct to an extent to do that. But I think it's something perhaps we do that too much, I think. And we all have our own stories, we all have our own, the stories of who we are and what we've done and our values, what makes us unique. And it's trying to shift from, comparing ourselves to other people, which is always obviously a pointless exercise because everyone's different and a different stage in life, to try and celebrate our uniqueness. And that's what creates our identity, is our uniqueness. Otherwise, like you say, if we all had the same, we have the same identity. So, yeah, definitely. I think social media makes the comparing things so much worse. But
Yeah, I agree.
I really like the point that you made about the voice of doubt. That sounds better than, imposter syndrome, because it's pretty much what it sums everything up to be when it comes to imposter syndrome. Myself, I struggled with the superwoman, and I can do it all. I can do it easy, and then I'd flop. But yeah, and I think the area that I have the difficulty with was always, making good financial decisions, and to talk to other people about how to manage finances was a struggle for me, because I had a lot of shame and guilt there, my upbringing from that. But I figured out that the best thing to do is just, along my journey to help me with imposter syndrome, was to be of service to people. So when I was of service to people, then I couldn't be kind of being in charge of it all, being a perfectionist. It was like I had to take direction from others. And so sort of like, in my field, I don't even use the word expert, because yeah, I agree. There's somebody that's older, wiser, has more education, whatever the case may be. I just don't feel the necessity to call myself an expert. I can say I specialize in a certain area, but I don't use the word expert.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm still trying to get our guest in. So, yes. Is there a way that you find that you're more disconnected to your identity in, if there's certain situations that you kind of, what's the word I want to use? Like almost like shape shift, right? You like shape yourself into the situation that you're in. And sometimes it makes you behave in ways that you normally wouldn't.
I can share if that's okay with that one. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for me, like I have different views than most people, just in my situations I'm dealing with. So if I hang out with a group and they have a totally opposite, point of view, sometimes I don't say anything, or I'll just, pretty much like go along with what they're saying without saying what I really truly believe. Then later I get so sick in my stomach, like I should have said something, and I know I should have like addressed that. But sometimes you just want to bring peace and not, bring your side of things at all times. And sometimes that's wisdom, but sometimes that's not really being yourself in situations when you want to really be yourself and who you are. So yeah.
I think you have to gauge the room that you're in.
Yeah.
Like if I believe that I always want to be the dumbest guy in the room. Like if I'm in a room with Richard Branson, I want to be the dumbest guy in that room, because I already know what I know, but I don't know what they know. So I think we have to really, I really gauge the room and sit there and I stalk and I watch and I lurk and I learn from the room. So I think it all depends on the room that we're in and what our role is in that room.
Yeah. And sometimes it's to be quiet and just listen.
Yeah.
My dad used to say while I was growing up, sometimes it's better to be smart than to be right. I think that's kind of what you're tapping into, right? Like sometimes it's better not to say anything than to be right, when you are legitimately probably right.
Right.
Well, so I think I've heard a similar thing where people who talk the most have the least to say. And I think definitely, I think listening is a key skill. It's like when you're a coach, and I think certainly when I've gone to events and I've been overwhelmed by the people in the room, who I've been like in awe of sometimes, like their status, and it's been a bit of imposter syndrome. And I thought, well, I guess it's that humility, humbleness thing. I think, well, I can learn a lot from these people. I can, if I listen to them, I can learn from them. I can, by listening to them, and I'm that's a positive thing I can do, just to chat to them and listen to them. And I think we sometimes put pressure on ourselves to create a certain impression or to interact in a certain way. But actually, I think there's a lot, you can get a lot of respect for humility. Like if you just by being present and engaging people, listening to people, and that in itself can be a way to create that positive sort of relationship.
Yeah. Is there a way that you would define success for yourself that might differ from what society says?
That's a really good question. What do you think it is, Ashley? What do you? I'd like to hear
now
your
you're going to
opinion.
turn the tables on me, Annette. Well, I mean, really, obviously, we all have our own definition of success. Is success for me? My kids are healthy. I have a healthy marriage. My body is healthy. Looking at the whole, right? Yes, financial stability is fantastic, but that's not, to me, that isn't something that is necessarily a must when you have a home that is and I'm not saying it's not important, right? Because stability is important, but when you have a home that's with love and teamwork and, that you feel like you've made it, but what is really making it, right? And society is oh, you've got the cars, you've got the girls, you've got the house, you've got, these big, elaborate, monetary possessions or chasing the things. Versus true success comes from within, and the joy that you feel when maybe everything has gone to shit, that you can find happiness and joy in all of those moments, because those are the moments that really shape us and define us, and they help us grow if you look for the lesson in the hard. So I think, again, success to everybody is going to be something different, but I think that's what it is for me. How much have I overcome? If I look back of where I was to where I am now, it's a completely different mindset, or it's a completely different viewpoint. It's wow, we, went from a 400 square foot apartment, and now we have, we don't have a big house, but 1,800 square foot house and 6 kids and, acreage, and we're living a comfortable life. But it's do you want more? Sure. But I've also learned to be content, I feel in where I'm at, and realizing okay, more house means more of this, or being realistic of I've got kids and they destroy everything. So new for me is not in the cards right now because they break stuff and they're kids, and a lot of them are boys, and they just need the space to be able to run. And that to me is okay, I think I'm good right now.
Well, for me,
That was
I
great.
realize I don't own anything. I'm just borrowing it. God lets me use it. So I don't own anything, because if you really think about it, somebody owned your house before you. Somebody's going to own your house after you. We're just here. We're borrowing what God lets us use. So once you come from that perspective, yes, He lets me drive a nice car. He lets me live in a nice house. I don't own it. I'm just using it. And once you have that humbleness of saying, okay, I have a big house, but I got kids that are running ransack. I'd rather have a house with kids that's running ransack than have an empty house and not being able to enjoy it whatsoever. So I think it all comes from your point of perspective of, knowing that we really don't own anything. God just lets us borrow it for a while.
For me, I agree. I feel strong about being content in whatever situation that you're in. I've had things ripped away from me. I've been like Job in the Bible who lost everything. And I'm just thankful for each day. I've also had very near-death experiences. So I'm just thankful to be alive and for each day, literally, of whatever, comes in, and just being alive and helping others in any way I can. And there's things I'm waiting for and things like that, but until then I'm just thankful. And success is really just being content for me in each situation, and knowing that you're in God's will, in the path that He told you to do, because there's different paths. For me, this is what I believe, and just following that path as much as you can. And Richard Kaufman is an amazing podcaster, and I've been on his show, and he's very good. Very good. Thank you. That's all.
I think it's nice what you guys are saying about contentedness. And I wish I could live like that. Because I really do think it takes reaching a certain ability level to just bask in feeling content and being okay with just being content. Because for me, it's like, I just can't live life without goal setting. And, and it's not really about obtaining objects. It's more about meeting goals of things that I'm really passionate about, that I've loved since I was young. To me, it's like, once I hit a goal that I set for myself, then I feel it's like, you get that dopamine kick when you've accomplished it. But I see it as forward movement in life, setting goals. And the other thing is the goals, I think, should have a reason for them. It should be something that is really important to you, or I mean, values wise, for me, it's writing is an example. Creative writing is something that I've loved since I was really young. I set a goal to publish a book, and then I did that, and it brought me to tears, once I finally did it. And I still kind of bask in that as a memory, because I fulfilled that goal. Getting a PhD in psychology was a goal that I set. And I think what makes it even more gratifying is when you fail, when you try it and then you fail, but then you keep trying and then you get it. And I think that's part of what makes life worth living. It's having hope and plans and, looking for growth, So I don't know. I think it's a tricky question.
Yeah, I think for me it's definitely linked to having a purpose, knowing your purpose, and towards a goal setting. So if you have you've got a purpose and you are working towards achieving that, and you're making a difference in the world in the way that you want to, you're making a contribution, you're actively reaching your goals and towards your purpose and what you want to achieve, and I think that's genuinely success. But I think it's obviously linked to that, as your well-being, because if haven't got good mental health or physical health, along the way, then can you say you're successful? And I think it's as you said, it's so complicated because obviously if you're in a lot of turmoil financially, that's not going to help you move, in your journey to success. But obviously that in itself isn't going to create success. So I think definitely having ultimately it's success is being in a position where you are content, you have a good state of well-being and mental physical health. But ultimately it's about having a purpose, knowing your purpose, and then you're moving along to achieve the goals in that purpose. That's to me, that's what success is.
Yeah, those are all fascinating views of success, and just like someone mentioned, it's very unique and individual. For myself, I measure my success when I wake up in the morning. If I go back to then, so when I was struggling with really bad days, it was a struggle to get out of bed, but it felt like there'd never be a successful day that I get out of bed and not feel really, really, really horrible. And then if I were to compare it to today, it's a success because all the hard work I did on my mental health, all the hard work of, remaining dedicated to overcoming my identities that I'd lost, and letting go of all these, all the traumas, that not focusing on them in the present, right? Not being in the past and suffering from depression, and, not always jumping into the future and struggling with my anxiety. So now I measure my success when I wake up and I'm, I smile, and I put my feet on the ground, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this today, and I'm going to make a difference in the world. And that's how I measure my success. And every day is a little different, when one of my relatives recently passed away, it didn't feel like such a successful morning. But every day is an opportunity to have a little bit of success in some area of your life. And I think I stopped measuring it against material things a long time ago. Like I've turned into a simplistic person, I guess. I don't buy trinkets, and I've never owned a house, and I don't know if I ever will, because it's not one of my major goals. I'd rather buy a little trailer and hitch it on the back of my car and take off and talk to people about mental health and their well-being, So that's my measure of success.
I love that. So, are there parts of yourself that you've hidden or ignored in the past, and why? Everybody's deep in thought.
Well, maybe we're still hiding, no?
Oh, there you go. Maybe, right?
For me, coming from my background as a veteran in the military, it's hard for me having young men growing up in the house, the old military guy not coming out and say, "Listen, dumbass, take out the garbage. Pick up the plastic bottles everywhere." So some of that stuff I think has to be hidden in order to get along. Because sometimes the old man comes out, and it's hard for me to get along and not say the things I'm supposed to do. But I think that it all becomes a part of self-awareness. Of sometimes I know that if I ever had to come down off the mountain, there's still a dangerous man in there that's going to protect my family. But I have to be careful when to let him out.
Yeah.
Well, myself, I hid two aspects of my life because of who I am. Well, here we go with labels. Being in the profession of being a mental and spiritual light worker, it's something you don't encourage to share. So it's not really hidden. It's like I choose to not share it, for select people only, right? So, and the part about ignoring, one of the biggest things I ignored, and that was the other thing I also hid, was my compulsive eating disorder and binging and all that kind of stuff. And I hid that from myself for many years, and I hid it from, I don't think I really hid it from other people because I was never concerned how people thought about me, but I did hide like food in my car and the things you do when you have a behavior that is unhealthy. So that was part of my identity, right? And that was part of overcoming the identity as being a compulsive overeater. So it was circling right back around to, how did you overcome that fear, right? And, after I mistreated myself physically by doing those things. So because I identified as being a compulsive overeater, I no longer identify myself as that. I now identify myself as someone who cares about her body and her mental health and her spiritual well-being so much that I constantly am monitoring. I can't even say the word.
Monitoring.
Thank you, Ashly.
Yes. What I'm doing with my, eat to nourish, not to numb. Now, that's my new slogan for my life now. And sometimes I fall off the wagon, but it's not anywhere close. And I guess if I want to go back to the previous topic of success. Yeah, that's my really happy point about success.
Yeah. Audrey, you look like you've got something to say.
Well, actually, it's funny that you said, because I'm very transparent. I wrote a book about my life, so I maybe too transparent sometimes, and that could be an issue. But I don't hold things back, and I guess that's part of who I am, and that might be a good thing, and sometimes it's not. But it is, what I felt led to share a lot about my life to help others too. But I'm trying to think if there's something that I haven't shared because I share too much. And maybe that's, I don't have to share as much. And my husband right now is very private. So it's been a very difficult situation because he's the opposite of me. So I'm trying to, not, to help not share too much sometimes. So it's something I'm working on.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, so for a lot of the time, in my 20s, I had the real lack of confidence and social anxiety. So I didn't share, I had trouble sharing and opening up, and certainly hid a lot of my true identity, a lot of what I wanted to say and what, my thought, and certainly in challenges I was going in mental health. I didn't share any of that. So I hid a lot. But yeah, I think now that's transitioned to me now, wanting to share my experiences, share my story, share. So I'm embracing every opportunity. But I think for me, yes, definitely sharing was something at one period of my life where I found very hard, share. And I would actually be the quiet person in the back of the room, no one noticed. But that's part of my story, obviously. Now I try to share everything. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that people hide, even when they think when they're telling themselves they're being completely transparent. It's just sort of this gut response sometimes to hide certain aspects of your personalities or your opinions, and it's sort of like, I think Richard said this, or it could have been Nick, but someone said read the room, right? Kind of depends. And the whole going back all comes full circle, that sometimes it's better to be smart than right, because there are certain circumstances in which people just won't understand And it's much easier to just give them the answer they would like or to give a half answer because otherwise you might be putting yourself in a situation that is either dangerous or unnecessarily uncomfortable. And so you might choose to hold back information from some people. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And if you feel unsafe, then it might even be better to hold back the information. Unfortunately, we live in a world that is not so, clear cut, and not everyone is accepting. But, in terms of a more relatively mild example for me, I would say like with my ADHD, I think I wrote about this in my book because it's part memoir, but I wrote that I really didn't get diagnosed until very recently. And part of that, the reason I didn't is because I was worried about the stigma or the misunderstanding people would have, or, even if I went out and wrote a book about it, like my boss would be reading that book, and I didn't want to be judged, by anyone, including my clients. I didn't want them to stereotype me and think like she's going to show up late to her sessions, because I don't, I think it's misunderstood. The other thing is I knew also that there would be like family members, like not my family, but like family members who would probably say like, no, she doesn't have ADHD, she's crazy. Or like, it's not ADHD, it's stupidity. Or, what makes her think she has ADHD? Like she's nuts for thinking that. And I just didn't want that. It's, first of all, it's very invalidating. This is my personal life and my brain, and you can't see it. And yeah, so it's tough. So I held back on that for a while, and every now and then, like my husband would say something like when my daughter was born, we would notice her behavior, and he would say, damn, she probably has ADHD. Like, where did she get that from? And I would be like, me. But it just is understood, as a condition, and I felt misunderstood, and I didn't want it to get worse. But then I actually had a role model. I was working with another psychologist who was so open about her ADHD. She just kind of talked about it like it was like a scab, like it wasn't even a big deal, or a birthmark or something. And I just loved that. And I was like, I want to do what she's doing. And so that just kind of changed things for me.
Yeah. I think it's when we can finally come to the realization that other people's opinions don't matter, right? And I think often it's easy to get sucked into, what is our family going to think? What is this person going to think? What is that person going to think? When we want to be our authentic selves and really walk in our God-given identities of boldness and confidence and all of that. I think for a long time, like situationally, I could very much just like unload, right? And voice the opinion that I have, but then stick me into a potentially confrontational situation, and I'm like this big.
Yeah.
Because it's like, holy crap, do I really have to get into this confrontation? Do I have to get into this discussion? Like it's all the feels, it's all the icky, it's all the holy buckle up buttercup. Because again, it's trying to control the situation, and what if they think this, and how am I going to counter that? And then when you leave the situation, you're like, damn it, I should have said XYZ, right? And like you said, Dr. Gilly, it's better to just zip it sometimes and not say anything. You don't need to be right. Like, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what's the difference, right? And just remembering that we can only control us. I think that I often say as a type A personality who loves to have control, it's one of those things that's out of my control, but I need to control it, or I want to control it. But then also walking sometimes in the identity, like as a kid, when you're the kid that has the report card that says she talks too much and she like, and then you start wearing the identity of I'm too much for people, right? Instead of realizing, well, I'm enough for some and some just won't like me and that's their problem, right? Is kind of the attitude that I've started to possess of I'm not everybody's cup of tea and it's okay. But it's really remembering that. But sometimes it also bothers you. It's like, well, what did I do? Am I really too much? Am I just this batshit crazy, mom of whoever? Am I too loud? Am I too this? And then, you begin to absorb and then almost gaslight yourself and second guess, like, maybe I am just crazy. And then and it's finding that balance and remembering, no, you're not for everybody and it's okay. Like you are who you were created to be. And yeah, you might need to tone it down in a few areas, but it's like, no, the ones that truly know who you are, they're going to love you regardless. They're going to love you anyway. And that's okay, right? Because again, you're not for everybody and that's okay too. So it's hiding, I think, for me, some of those parts, some of the too muches, right? The opinions, especially when I get around family. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna be quiet over here because anything that I contribute to this conversation will put me on a soapbox and then it's going to create this huge explosion. So I'm just gonna be quiet and just mind my own business at the moment and just, yep, it's all good. So yeah. Well,
I can totally relate with that, what you just said, Ashley. I have to deal with my children that way. Exactly as you described. I get it.
Well, and I can remember when I was in the hospital, I had been in the hospital probably over a week already. And like growing up, my parents, like there was no way in hell that they were ever going to be in the same room together for any extended period of time. It just wasn't going to happen. And then when I was sick and I was in the hospital, both of them were in my hospital room together, like all day. And I was like, this is weird. It was so incredibly weird. And I'm stuck in this hospital bed. I got chest tubes, IVs, all the things. And we were talking about homeschooling and a couple different, things regarding the kids and whatever. Mm-hmm. And they were bringing some things up and asking whatever. And I looked at the two of them and I'm like, listen, you two, we are not going to have this conversation right now while I am stuck in this hospital bed and the two of you are going to gang up on me. I said, no, it's not happening. And for me to say that was like, usually I would just, kind of cater to the situation or not really say anything. But for me, that felt empowering. I was like, no, we're not doing this. Not today. Like I am stuck here and I'm not going to feel ganged up on. Like it's just not going to happen. And we've never had a conversation beyond that, like regarding that topic or any of the topics that they were trying to talk about, because I made my stance known and like I set the boundary. But that was hard for me. So it's like I pick and choose my battles these days for some things, and some things I really want to battle it out, but I'm like, it's not worth it. Like sometimes it just isn't freaking worth it. Like just keep it closed. Like it's like the Lord is bridled the tongue of nope, I'm gonna you're not gonna say anything. You can stew and you can vent to your husband all you want, but nope, we're not going there. Okay. But I mean, again, it's like Richard said, it's reading the room, it's figuring out, what's good to unleash or let out and what needs to just stay quiet. But yeah.
Quickly, that's funny that you said that. My 16-year-old today had said to me, she's like, okay, I'm going to, and she's serious. She went to her aunt's in New Jersey. I'm in Florida, for the summer. And she comes back, she's like, I'm going to college in New Jersey and my boyfriend's coming with me and we're gonna move there, and stay with the aunt, right? And I've had custody battles for like ever, like, but for her to just come and say that, and the old me would have been like, arguing with her about it, and I was like, you know what, I'm not even gonna argue. Okay, whatever you like, sweetheart. Because if she's 18 at that time, she could make her own decisions, but she's only 16 now, and I have 2 years, and I can go on all day arguing with her and telling her why it's wrong and this and that. But I've learned to, choose my battles because she's very strong-willed and you won't win it with her, So it's, with the teenagers, sometimes you have to learn when to be, not to get into a huge debate about everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Sort of like picking your battles.
Yeah, picking your battles, because I just know she would like get the aunt involved and then it would be a whole World War X in court, and sometimes it's just give it to God and wait on him.
The other thing is like the after effects of that are just so draining. So you have to ask yourself, like, is this worth ruining my day over? Because the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And if you've been in this situation before and tried this approach and it has failed and it has failed and it has failed, you may want to try a different approach, right? Like switch it up and ask yourself, is this worth it? And that way, when it is worth it, then it won't seem as, it might not result in as big of an argument. And you can also remind her, you could say like, well, you wanted this and you got it and I was happy to give it to you. You wanted this, I was happy to give it to you. And now I'm asking you this one thing, or now I'm differing in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think are we done for today? Or wrapping up?
We are at time. Next week, Adam said we are talking about the art of listening, and next week's show is going to be 8:30 p.m. UK time. So a little bit of a time change on that. I will not be here next week. So I think it's Adam for sure. Nick, are you here next week?
I'm on holiday next week, so yes, I'm not going to be with my son.
Awesome. That'll be fun. Richard, are you here next week?
I'll be here next week.
Okay. Adam will be back. Hopefully he'll be feeling better next week. So we will be good to go. Awesome.
Bye, everyone. Good show. Take care. Cheers. Good to see you all.
Later.
Thank you so much.